Great Gatsby, original abridged adaptation. Chapter 1. When I was young, my father gave me advice that stayed with me for the rest of my life. Before you judge someone, he said, remember that not everyone has had the same chances you've had. Because of that, I learned to listen more than I spoke. People often trusted me with their secrets, even when I never asked to hear them. I discovered that every person carries hidden hopes and disappointments. Still, there came a point when I grew tired of watching people waste their lives. Yet one man was different. His name was Jay Gatsby. There was something extraordinary about him, an almost impossible belief that tomorrow could always be brighter than today. It was a gift I have never seen in anyone else. In the spring of 1922, after serving in the Great War, I left the familiar fields and quiet towns of the American Midwest to learn the bond business in New York. Instead of renting a room in the city, I found a small weathered bungalow in a place called West Egg on Long Island. It was modest, squeezed between grand estates that belonged to people whose fortunes seemed endless. My little house cost $80 a month. Next door stood an enormous mansion with marble terraces, sweeping lawns, and a tower inspired by old French chateaux. I did not yet know its owner, only that a mysterious man named Gatsby lived there. Across the bay glittered East Egg. The two places looked almost identical from the water, like twin eggs resting upon the sea. Yet they could not have been more different. East Egg belonged to families whose wealth stretched back for generations. West Egg was filled with those who had earned their fortunes more recently. People with money, but not always with acceptance. One warm evening, I drove across the bay to dine with my cousin Daisy Buchanan and her husband, Tom. Tom had once been one of the greatest American football players of his generation. Even years later, he carried himself like a man accustomed to winning every contest. He was broad-shouldered, immensely strong, and confident to the point of arrogance. Wealth surrounded him so completely that it seemed as natural to him as breathing. Their Georgian mansion overlooked the water with rolling lawns, formal gardens, and elegant white columns glowing in the evening light. Inside, great French windows stood open to the summer breeze. White curtains billowed like sails, lifting and falling with the wind. The room seemed to float. On a long sofa reclined two women dressed in white. One was Daisy, the other was Jordan Baker. Daisy rose to greet me with her familiar warmth. She possessed a rare kind of beauty, not simply in her face, but in her voice. It seemed to sing even during ordinary conversation, drawing people closer as though every sentence carried the promise of something wonderful just beyond reach. Jordan Baker, by contrast, watched everything with cool detachment. She was elegant, athletic, and quietly amused by the world around her. As we talked, Daisy mentioned her little daughter. She smiled, yet there was sadness beneath it, like sunlight shining through thin cloud. Dinner was served on the terrace overlooking the bay. Tom soon dominated the conversation. He spoke with certainty about books, race, and society, repeating fashionable theories that revealed more about his own prejudice than about the world itself. Daisy answered him lightly, teasing his seriousness with playful wit, though beneath her laughter, something uneasy remained. Then the telephone rang. Tom excused himself. No one explained why. Jordan leaned towards me. "Everyone knows," she whispered. "Tom has another woman in New York." The words settled over the evening like a sudden shadow. When Tom returned, Daisy smiled as though nothing had happened. The conversation continued, but the room no longer felt quite so bright. Later, away from the others, Daisy confessed that life had disappointed her. She told me about the day her daughter was born. "I hoped she'd be a beautiful little fool," she said quietly. "That's the best thing a girl can be in this world." She laughed after saying it, but it sounded like laughter hiding sorrow. For a moment, I sensed that behind the glittering wealth, beautiful clothes, and effortless charm, stood a woman trapped inside a life she could neither escape nor fully accept. As the evening ended, I drove home beneath a warm summer sky. The wind had fallen still. The trees whispered softly. Frogs called across the dark gardens, and moonlight silvered the lawns beside the sound. Then I noticed a solitary figure standing at the edge of the great mansion next door. It was Gatsby. He stood perfectly still with his hands in his pockets, gazing across the water toward East Egg. Slowly, almost reverently, he stretched out his arms. I followed his gaze. Far away, across the black water, burned a single green light at the end of a dock. It was tiny, distant, yet Gatsby reached toward it as though it contained every hope he had ever dared to dream. When I looked again, he had disappeared into the darkness. Only the green light remained, shining across the quiet bay. Chapter 2. The road from West Egg to New York passed through a place unlike anywhere else. It was called the Valley of Ashes. Gray dust covered everything: the ground, the buildings, the people themselves. Factories poured smoke into the sky while tired men worked beneath clouds of ash that drifted like dirty snow. It felt forgotten by the world, caught between wealth and poverty, hope and despair. Watching over it all was an enormous faded billboard. A pair of giant blue eyes stared down through yellow spectacles. The advertisement had long since been abandoned, yet the eyes remained, silent and unblinking, as though they judged everyone who passed beneath them. One afternoon, Tom insisted I leave the train with him there. "I want you to meet someone," he said. His tone left little room for refusal. We crossed the railway tracks to a shabby garage owned by George Wilson. Wilson was a pale, weary man whose hope seemed to have drained away long ago. His business struggled, his clothes were dusted with ash, and he greeted Tom with anxious respect, unaware that the wealthy man standing before him had already stolen far more than his custom. From upstairs came the sound of footsteps. Then she appeared. Myrtle Wilson. She was in her 30s, not conventionally beautiful, but full of restless energy. There was confidence in the way she moved, as though she refused to let the gray world around her define her. She greeted Tom with a glance that spoke of secrets. Ignoring her husband almost completely, Tom quietly arranged to meet her in New York. George noticed nothing, or perhaps he simply could not bear to see it. Later that afternoon, Myrtle joined us on the train into Manhattan. She sat separately until we reached the city, careful not to attract attention. Once in New York, she transformed herself. She bought perfume, magazines, and a small dog from a street vendor, delighting in each purchase as though every object carried her further from the Valley of Ashes and closer to the glamorous life she imagined. Tom watched her with amused ownership. Together we traveled to a small apartment he kept for their meetings. It was crowded with oversized furniture that tried far too hard to look expensive. Everything suggested luxury, yet nothing truly possessed it. The apartment felt like an imitation of wealth, a stage set where Myrtle could briefly pretend she belonged to another world. Soon, Myrtle invited guests. Her sister Catherine arrived, along with a photographer named Mr. McKee and his wife. The room filled with cigarette smoke, whiskey, and loud conversation. As the afternoon drifted into evening, the drinking grew heavier. Myrtle became increasingly confident. She spoke grandly about money, fashionable people, and her future, eager to separate herself from the ordinary life she shared with George Wilson. Every sentence carried the excitement of someone determined to become the person she wished she already was. Tom listened with growing impatience. To him, Myrtle was never an equal. She was an escape from his marriage, nothing more. The conversation eventually turned to Daisy. Myrtle began repeating Daisy's name again and again, her voice growing louder with each mention. Tom warned her once. She ignored him. She mocked Daisy openly. Again, he told her to stop. She refused. In a sudden flash of anger, Tom struck her across the face. The room fell silent. Blood ran from Myrtle's nose as the laughter, music, and conversation vanished in an instant. No one challenged him. No one left. the party simply collapsed into uneasy silence, exposing the cruelty that had been hiding beneath the afternoon's careless glamour. Much later, my memories blurred by whiskey and exhaustion, I found myself leaving the apartment and stepping back into the cool New York night. The bright lights of the city still glittered around me, yet all I could think about was the strange contrast I had witnessed. In one world, there were magnificent mansions, polished manners, and elegant dinner parties. In another, there was dust, deception, loneliness, and violence. And somehow, the same people belonged to both. Chapter 3. Every weekend, Gatsby's mansion came alive. As Friday turned to Saturday, delivery vans arrived carrying crates of fresh fruit, flowers, and enough food to feed a small village. Gardeners trimmed the lawns until they looked like green velvet, while servants hurried through the great house preparing for another dazzling evening. By sunset, motor cars streamed through the gates. Guests arrived dressed in silk, satin, and black evening coats. Some had been invited. Many had not. They simply came because everyone knew Gatsby's parties were the most extraordinary on Long Island. An orchestra filled the gardens with lively jazz. Champagne flowed without end. Laughter drifted across the water. People danced beneath colored lanterns while the marble swimming pool reflected hundreds of golden lights. It was a world that glittered like a dream. Yet beneath all the excitement, one strange thing united almost every guest. Hardly anyone had actually met Gatsby. Instead, they whispered stories. I heard he was related to European royalty. They say he was a German spy during the war. No, he killed a man. Each rumor grew more outrageous than the last. The mysterious host remained almost invisible, allowing legends to spread more quickly than the truth. One Saturday evening, I finally received a genuine invitation. Curious to discover the man behind the stories, I walked across the lawn to his magnificent house. Inside, every room overflowed with strangers. People introduced themselves to one another as if they had been lifelong friends. Others drank too much and laughed too loudly. Some wandered the enormous rooms simply to admire the luxury surrounding them. The house itself seemed less like a home than a beautiful stage upon which everyone performed the version of themselves they most wanted the world to believe. As I searched for Gatsby, I unexpectedly met Jordan Baker. Together we explored the mansion, asking anyone we met if they had seen our host. Nobody knew. Finally, we wandered into the quiet library. There, an elderly guest wearing enormous owl-shaped spectacles stood staring at the shelves in amazement. "They're real," he whispered. "What are?" I asked. "The books." He laughed in disbelief. "I expected painted cardboard. Everything else here feels like theater, but these books are genuine." His words stayed with me. Even in this palace of illusion, reality still existed, though perhaps only in small corners. Later, while sitting alone outside, I struck up a conversation with a polite young man. We spoke about the war. To my surprise, we had both served in France. He smiled warmly and mentioned a place we had both known. There was something calm and sincere about him that immediately set him apart from everyone else at the party. Only after several minutes did he say quietly, "I'm Gatsby." For a moment, I could only stare. This courteous, modest man bore little resemblance to the mysterious figure of rumor and gossip. He seemed almost amused by the stories people invented about him. Before long, Gatsby excused himself. His business, he explained, required constant attention. Almost immediately, another guest was arrested after driving his car into a ditch outside the gates. The wrecked motor car sat tilted at an impossible angle while its thoroughly confused driver insisted nothing was wrong. People laughed. The party simply carried on. It seemed that money protected everyone from consequence. As the evening came to an end, Gatsby remained standing alone on the steps of his mansion. One by one, his guests departed into the darkness. He thanked them politely, smiling with effortless charm, yet there was something lonely about him. The music faded, the lights grew dim, silence slowly returned to the gardens. In the weeks that followed, I saw Gatsby only occasionally. Meanwhile, I spent more time with Jordan Baker. One afternoon, she revealed something remarkable. Years earlier, before Daisy married Tom Buchanan, she had fallen deeply in love with a young military officer. His name had been Jay Gatsby. Jordan remembered seeing them together in Louisville. Daisy had adored him. She had spoken of no one else. But the war had separated them. Time had passed. And eventually, Daisy married Tom, choosing wealth and security over an uncertain future. Jordan paused before adding quietly, "I think Gatsby bought that enormous house for one reason. So he could live across the bay from Daisy." Suddenly, everything made sense. The magnificent mansion, the endless parties, the mysterious loneliness, even the green light shining across the water. None of it had ever been about wealth. It had always been about hope. Every light, every guest, and every extravagant celebration was part of one impossible dream. That one day Daisy might wander into his house, and the years between them would simply disappear. Chapter 4. As summer settled over Long Island, Gatsby's parties became the talk of New York. Every weekend, the rich, the fashionable, and the merely curious crossed the bay to his mansion. They arrived laughing, dancing, and drinking beneath strings of glowing lights, then vanished before dawn carrying fresh rumors about the mysterious millionaire. Yet Gatsby himself remained an enigma. One morning, his gleaming yellow Rolls-Royce arrived outside my cottage. A chauffeur stepped out. "Mr. Gatsby would like you to lunch with him in New York." Soon I was sitting beside Gatsby as we drove toward the city. For a while, he was unusually quiet. Then, almost as though he had rehearsed the speech many times, he began telling me about himself. "I am the son of wealthy people from the Middle West." He spoke of being educated at Oxford, traveling through Europe, collecting jewels, hunting big game, and serving with distinction during the Great War. His story sounded polished, perhaps too polished. It was difficult to know whether I should believe him. Sensing my doubt, Gatsby reached into his pocket. He showed me a medal awarded by the government of Montenegro for bravery during the war. Then he unfolded an old photograph of himself at Oxford, standing among other young men in academic gowns. The evidence was convincing. Even so, there remained something carefully guarded behind his smile. In New York, we lunched at a fashionable restaurant. There, Gatsby introduced me to a remarkable man named Meyer Wolfsheim. He was friendly, courteous, and impeccably dressed. After he left, Gatsby quietly explained who he was. Wolfsheim was famous for fixing the World Series years before. I stared in disbelief. The idea that someone could manipulate an entire championship seemed almost impossible. Yet Gatsby spoke of it as calmly as if discussing the weather. For the first time, I realized that his fortune might have been built in a world far removed from the glittering respectability of his parties. That afternoon, I met Jordan Baker for tea. She had promised to tell me something important. At last, she revealed the full story. Years before, in Louisville, Daisy had fallen deeply in love with a young officer named Jay Gatsby. They had planned a future together. But Gatsby had gone away to war. He had no money, no certainty, only dreams. As the months passed, Daisy waited. Letters became fewer. Time moved on. Then Tom Buchanan appeared. He was handsome, powerful, and unimaginably wealthy. He gave Daisy pearls worth hundreds of thousands of dollars and offered her the secure life Gatsby could not. She married Tom. Jordan admitted that on the night before the wedding, Daisy had broken down in tears. For a brief moment, she had wanted to call everything off. She clutched one of Gatsby's old letters as though it contained her heart. But by the next morning, she had gathered herself together. The letter disappeared. The wedding went ahead, and Gatsby became part of the past. Or so everyone believed. He never forgot her, Jordan said quietly. He bought that mansion because it's directly across the bay from Daisy's house. Every dazzling party, every orchestra, every glittering light. They had all been arranged for one reason. He hoped that one evening Daisy might wander through his gates. She never did. Then Jordan finally explained why Gatsby had taken such an interest in me. He wants you to invite Daisy to tea. I looked at her in surprise. He doesn't want her to know he's arranged it, she continued. He wants it to seem like chance. Suddenly, I understood. The mysterious parties, the green light across the water, the house standing opposite Daisy's. It had never been about showing off his wealth. It had always been about reaching the past, about believing that one perfect afternoon could undo 5 years of absence. Gatsby was asking me to become the bridge between the life he had lost and the dream he had never stopped believing in. Chapter 5. The day Gatsby and Daisy were to meet arrived beneath heavy gray skies. Rain fell steadily across Long Island, washing the gardens and turning the windows of my little cottage into mirrors of silver. From early morning, Gatsby was restless. He sent gardeners to fill my small house with fresh flowers. Every room overflowed with roses, lilies, and pale blossoms until it seemed more like a wedding than an afternoon tea. Nothing, he decided, could be less than perfect. A little before 3 o'clock, Gatsby arrived. For the first time since I had met him, he looked uncertain. His usually confident smile flickered. His hands trembled slightly. "Nobody's coming to tea?" he asked casually, though his voice betrayed him. I assured him everything would be fine. Instead of calming him, my words seemed only to increase his nervousness. Soon Daisy's car pulled into the drive. She stepped out carrying a small umbrella, smiling politely, unaware that a man had spent 5 years dreaming of this very moment. I welcomed her inside. For a few awkward seconds, no one spoke. Gatsby stood frozen. Daisy looked equally uncomfortable. The silence felt endless. Unable to bear it any longer, I quietly slipped into the kitchen, giving them a chance to speak alone. When I returned a little later, everything had changed. The tension had melted away. Gatsby glowed with happiness. Daisy's cheeks were flushed, and laughter flowed naturally between them as though the years apart had vanished. Outside, the rain was already beginning to clear. Gatsby suddenly had an idea. "Come and see my house." Together we crossed the lawns to his great mansion. He unlocked the enormous front doors and led us through room after room. Sunlight now streamed through the tall windows, making crystal chandeliers sparkle and polished floors shine. Everything was beautiful. Everything was extravagant. Yet it became clear that none of it truly mattered to Gatsby. He wasn't showing Daisy his wealth. He was watching her reactions. Every smile she gave seemed more valuable to him than the marble staircases, priceless paintings, or glittering rooms surrounding them. He proudly opened wardrobes filled with shirts imported from England. Silk, linen, soft cotton in every imaginable color. One by one, he tossed them into great colorful piles. Blue, gold, lavender, white. The fabrics floated gently through the air like bright petals. Suddenly, Daisy buried her face in them and began to cry. "They're such beautiful shirts," she whispered through her tears. But it was never really about the shirts. They represented everything Gatsby had spent years trying to become. Everything he believed he had needed before he could deserve her love. From one of the upstairs windows, Gatsby pointed across the bay. "You can see Daisy's house from here." He smiled. And at night, the green light is just there. They stood together looking over the water. For years, that tiny green light had been the center of Gatsby's dreams. It had represented hope, distance, possibility. Now Daisy herself stood beside him. The dream had finally become real. The green light no longer seemed quite so magical. Sometimes, when we finally reach the thing we have longed for, we discover that the dream itself had always been larger than reality. In the music room, Gatsby invited his friend Klipspringer to play the piano. Soft melodies drifted through the house as sunlight filled every room. For a little while, the past seemed to have returned. The years apart disappeared. War, distance, and disappointment all slipped quietly into the background. Watching them together, I realized they were no longer seeing the present. They were seeing the people they had once been, young, hopeful, certain that love could conquer time itself. As evening approached, I sensed they no longer needed me. Without disturbing them, I quietly left. Behind me, Gatsby and Daisy remained standing together in the golden light of the great house. For the first time in years, Gatsby had everything he had ever wished for. Or at least he believed he did. Yet somewhere beneath the joy, I could not shake a quiet feeling. No dream, however beautiful, can remain untouched when it finally meets reality. Chapter 6. As the summer wore on, rumors about Gatsby became even more extravagant. Some claimed he was royalty, others insisted he was a criminal. The newspapers even began asking questions about where his fortune had come from. Very few people knew the truth. Even I did not know it fully. The man the world called Jay Gatsby had not been born with that name. He had begun life as James Gatz, the son of poor farmers in North Dakota. From an early age, he dreamed of something greater. He refused to believe the life into which he had been born would be the one he would always live. He imagined a future filled with elegance, success, and endless possibility. Long before he possessed wealth, he had already invented the man he wished to become. Jay Gatsby was not simply a new name. He was a new life. When he was 17, fate offered him a chance. He met a wealthy adventurer named Dan Cody, whose magnificent yacht lay anchored on Lake Superior. Learning that a storm was approaching, young James rowed out to warn him. The warning saved the yacht. Grateful, Cody took the ambitious young man into his service. For years, Gatsby traveled with him across America and around the world. He learned how wealthy people dressed, spoke, and entertained. He witnessed a life of luxury he had only imagined before. Although Cody intended to leave Gatsby part of his fortune, legal disputes after his death meant Gatsby inherited nothing. Once again, he was left with only his dreams. But this time, he knew exactly what kind of man he wanted to become. One afternoon, Tom Buchanan unexpectedly arrived at Gatsby's mansion with several friends after a day of horse riding. Unlike Gatsby's usual guests, they had not come seeking excitement. They had simply stopped by. Gatsby welcomed them warmly. He invited them to stay for dinner. Tom declined politely, but there was a coolness beneath his smile. He looked around the enormous estate with quiet suspicion. People like Tom inherited wealth. People like Gatsby earned it. To Tom, that made all the difference. A few evenings later, Tom and Daisy attended one of Gatsby's famous parties. The gardens sparkled beneath thousands of lights. Jazz drifted through the warm summer air. Champagne flowed endlessly. Guests laughed, danced, and wandered through the glowing mansion. Gatsby remained entirely focused on one person, Daisy. He watched her constantly, eager for her approval. He wanted her to love every detail of the world he had built for her. Instead, she seemed uncomfortable. The noise, the strangers, the endless display of wealth. None of it felt like the dream Gatsby believed he was offering. When the evening ended, Daisy admitted she hadn't enjoyed herself. Her disappointment cut Gatsby more deeply than he cared to admit. Later that night, we stood together outside his house. "I want everything to be exactly as it was before," Gatsby said quietly. His eyes rested on the dark water beyond the lawn. "I'll fix everything." I hesitated. "You can't repeat the past." He turned to me, genuinely astonished. "Can't repeat the past?" he cried. "Why, of course you can." To Gatsby, the years between him and Daisy were nothing more than an obstacle waiting to be removed. He believed that if Daisy truly loved him, she would simply erase her marriage, forget the passing of time, and return to the life they had planned before the war. His dream remained untouched by doubt. As I listened, I realized something extraordinary. Most people dream of a better future. Gatsby dreamed of a perfect past. He had spent years building his fortune, his mansion, and even his identity around a single belief: that love could be recovered exactly as it had once existed. Yet memories are like reflections upon water, beautiful, tempting, but impossible to hold. Watching Gatsby gaze towards Daisy's house once more, I wondered whether he was chasing the woman herself, or the shining dream he had carried with him for 5 long years. For the first time, I feared those two things might no longer be the same. Chapter 7. By late summer, everything had changed. Gatsby stopped holding his famous parties. The orchestra disappeared. The colored lanterns no longer glowed in the gardens. The endless stream of guests came to an end. The great mansion, once filled with laughter, fell strangely quiet. He no longer needed crowds. He wanted only Daisy. One sweltering afternoon, Daisy invited Tom, Jordan, Gatsby, and me to lunch at her house in East Egg. The heat hung heavily over the rooms. Even the curtains seemed too tired to move. Conversation drifted without purpose until Gatsby and Daisy exchanged one glance too many. Tom noticed. He said nothing at first, but something hard settled behind his eyes. For the first time, he understood. His wife was in love with another man. Tom suddenly suggested they all drive into New York. No one argued. The journey itself felt tense. Tom insisted on driving Gatsby's bright yellow motor car with Nick and Jordan beside him. Gatsby drove Tom's blue coupe with Daisy at his side. No one seemed comfortable. Everyone sensed that something inevitable was approaching. On the way, Tom stopped for petrol at George Wilson's garage in the Valley of Ashes. The place looked even bleaker beneath the summer sun. George himself appeared pale and exhausted. He revealed that he planned to leave town with Myrtle. He had discovered she had been seeing another man. He did not know who. Tom's face tightened. For the first time, he realized he might lose both his wife and his mistress. His sense of control was slipping away. The heat in New York became almost unbearable. The 5 of us gathered in a suite at the Plaza Hotel. The room felt airless. Outside, the city shimmered beneath the blazing sun. Inside, years of hidden feelings finally burst into the open. Tom turned to Gatsby. "So," he said coldly, "what kind of business are you really in?" Gatsby remained calm. He refused to be intimidated. Then Tom attacked again. He hinted that Gatsby's fortune had come from crime. Bootlegging, illegal business, dishonest dealings. Gatsby denied nothing. Instead, he looked only at Daisy. "Daisy never loved you," he said quietly. "She loves me." Silence filled the room. Then Daisy spoke. "I did love him once." She glanced towards Tom. "But I loved you too." The words struck Gatsby harder than any blow. His perfect dream depended upon one impossible truth: that Daisy had loved only him. Now, before his eyes, that dream began to crack. "No," Gatsby pleaded. "You can't mean that." But memories cannot be rewritten simply because we wish them to be. Tom saw victory returning. He smiled with quiet confidence. He urged Daisy to go home with Gatsby in the yellow car, knowing the spell between them had been broken. She agreed. The rest of us followed later. No one spoke very much. The afternoon had changed everything. As Gatsby and Daisy drove back through the Valley of Ashes, tragedy struck. Myrtle Wilson, believing Tom was driving the yellow motorcar, ran into the road. The car never stopped. It struck her with terrible force. She died almost instantly. By the time we arrived, a crowd had gathered. George Wilson knelt beside his wife in silent disbelief. Tom recognized the yellow car immediately. For a brief moment, he believed Gatsby had been driving. In truth, Daisy had been behind the wheel. Overwhelmed by fear and panic, she had kept driving. Gatsby had taken the blame without hesitation. That evening, I found Gatsby standing outside the Buchanan house. He watched the window silently. "What are you doing?" I asked. "I'm waiting," he replied. He wanted to make sure Daisy was safe. He was prepared to protect her, whatever the cost. Even now, after everything that had happened, he expected her to leave the house and choose him. I glanced through the brightly lit window. Inside, Tom and Daisy sat together at the kitchen table. They were talking quietly. There was no anger, no panic, only two people sharing a private understanding. For the first time, I realized something Gatsby could not. Tom and Daisy belonged to the same world. A world of wealth, privilege, and protection. No matter how deeply Daisy had once loved Gatsby, she might never truly leave it. Outside, Gatsby continued his lonely vigil beneath the dark summer sky, still guarding the dream that was slipping further away with every passing hour. Chapter 8. I could not sleep that night. As dawn approached, I felt an uneasy certainty that Gatsby should not be alone. When I reached his mansion, he had not gone to bed. He had spent the entire night waiting for Daisy to telephone. The call had never come. We sat together as the first light spread across the gardens. For the first time, Gatsby spoke openly about the past. 5 years earlier, he had met Daisy while serving as a young army officer in Louisville. She was beautiful, charming, and surrounded by wealth. He had fallen hopelessly in love. So had she. When they were together, the future seemed limitless. But Gatsby carried a secret. He was poor. He owned nothing except his ambition. Even then, he believed he had no right to ask Daisy to wait for him. The war separated them before he could become the man he wanted to be. While Gatsby fought overseas, Daisy's life continued. Letters arrived less often. Months became years. Then Tom Buchanan entered her world. He offered certainty instead of hope, a mansion instead of dreams, a life already built. Eventually, she married him. Gatsby never blamed her. Instead, he blamed himself for not returning soon enough. Everything he had done since then, every business venture, every lavish party, every grand room in his mansion, had been driven by one belief: that somehow he could win back the life he had lost. As Gatsby spoke, I realized how completely he had surrendered himself to the dream. He had not simply loved Daisy. He had built an entire future around the memory of her. Yet memories never remain untouched. While Gatsby had spent 5 years imagining their perfect reunion, Daisy had been living an entirely different life. She had become a wife, a mother, a woman shaped by choices that could not simply be undone. Before leaving for work, I turned back to Gatsby. He stood on the steps of his great house, watching me. "They're a rotten crowd," I called. "You're worth the whole damn bunch put together." He smiled. It was the only compliment I ever gave him. And it was the only one that truly mattered. Meanwhile, in the Valley of Ashes, George Wilson sat beside his wife's body. Grief had hollowed him. He believed someone had deliberately taken Myrtle from him. Slowly, neighbors revealed what little they knew. The yellow motor car, its mysterious owner, a wealthy man from West Egg. Wilson became convinced that the driver must also have been Myrtle's secret lover. Despair hardened into determination. He set out to find the owner of the yellow car. That afternoon, Gatsby wandered through his gardens. The house stood strangely silent. No music drifted through the windows. No laughter echoed across the lawns. Only birdsong and the gentle movement of leaves disturbed the stillness. Perhaps, for the first time in years, Gatsby allowed himself to hope that Daisy's telephone call might yet arrive. He waited and waited, The summer heat lingered over the swimming pool. Although autumn was approaching, Gatsby decided to swim one last time. He floated peacefully on the clear water beneath an endless blue sky. It was a moment of rare calm. Then George Wilson appeared. Driven by grief, convinced he had found the man responsible for destroying his life, he walked quietly through the gardens. He found Gatsby beside the pool. A single gunshot shattered the afternoon. Moments later, another followed. When the gardener reached the pool, Gatsby drifted silently upon the water. Nearby, George Wilson lay dead. His search for justice had ended in tragedy. The telephone remained silent. No message from Daisy ever came. The dream Gatsby had devoted his life to had ended exactly as it had begun, reaching towards something beautiful that was always just beyond his grasp. The mansion stood magnificent beneath the afternoon sun, yet it had never seemed so empty. For all his wealth, Gatsby died possessing only the thing that had sustained him from the beginning: hope. A hope so extraordinary that it carried him through poverty, war, and loneliness. And a hope so impossible that, in the end, it could not survive the truth. Chapter 9. After Gatsby's death, the great mansion fell silent. The music had stopped. The lights were dark. The crowds who had once filled the gardens vanished almost overnight. People had been eager to enjoy Gatsby's hospitality. Very few were willing to mourn him. I found myself responsible for arranging his funeral. I telephoned everyone I could think of. The guests who had filled his parties made excuses. Some were traveling, others were too busy. Many simply never replied. It saddened me to discover how quickly admiration disappeared when there was nothing left to gain. I searched for Daisy. She and Tom had already left Long Island. No forwarding address, no farewell, no explanation. They simply disappeared, leaving others to deal with the consequences of the lives they had broken. It struck me then that they moved through the world carelessly, protected by their wealth, while those around them were left to clear away the wreckage. One afternoon, an elderly man arrived at Gatsby's house. I recognized him immediately. He was the guest with the owl-shaped spectacles whom I had met in Gatsby's library during one of the great parties. He looked around the empty mansion in disbelief. "The poor son of a..." he murmured sadly. Then, after a long silence, he added, "The poor son of a bitch." His words held no mockery, only genuine sorrow. He had understood something that so many others had missed. Soon afterwards, another visitor arrived. It was Gatsby's father. Henry Gatz had traveled from Minnesota after hearing the news. He was an elderly man, dressed simply, yet his face shone with quiet pride as he walked through the enormous house. To him, every room was proof of what his son had achieved. He showed me an old notebook Gatsby had kept as a boy. Inside were carefully written plans for self-improvement. Early rising, exercise, study, hard work. Even as a child, Gatsby had believed he could build a better version of himself. His dream had begun long before Daisy entered his life. She had become its brightest symbol, not its beginning. The funeral took place beneath gray autumn skies. Rain fell softly over the cemetery. Only a handful of people stood beside the grave. Gatsby's father, the man with the owl-shaped spectacles, a few servants, and me. The hundreds who had filled his gardens with laughter never came. It was a lonely ending for a man who had spent so much of his life bringing others together. Soon afterwards, I decided to leave New York. The city no longer seemed full of opportunity. Instead, it felt exhausted by greed, ambition, and endless illusion. I longed once more for the honesty and quiet landscapes of the American Midwest where I had grown up. Before departing, I visited Gatsby's empty mansion one last time. The gardens were still. The swimming pool lay silent beneath falling leaves. Everything that had once glittered now seemed strangely fragile. That evening, I walked to the end of Gatsby's lawn. Across the dark water, I could just make out the faint green light on Daisy's dock. It seemed smaller now, less magical, yet somehow even more moving. I thought about Gatsby standing there night after night, stretching out his arms towards it. He had believed with all his heart that tomorrow would finally bring the happiness he sought. He believed the past could be recovered, that dreams could become reality. Perhaps we all believe something similar. We imagine that just beyond the next success, the next journey, the next year, or the next sunrise lies the life we have always wanted. Yet the future keeps moving away from us, just as the green light always remained across the water. Still, we continue, we hope, we dream, and we keep reaching for something just beyond our grasp. For that is what it means to be human. Like Gatsby, we are forever sailing towards tomorrow, even as the currents of time quietly carry us back through yesterday. And so the story ends, not simply as the tale of one extraordinary man, but as a reminder that hope is both our greatest strength and, sometimes, our greatest illusion.